stuff that benefits the resource, that protects the resource, that works to understand the resource, and provides opportunities for the public to learn about it as well. And if it wasn't for the stuff that you folks do, and Jim has been a stellar example of leading and helping groups like yours do things for groups like mine, we would not have the active programs that we do today. And in the course of it, it's important to stress that we're not just logs, even though it feels like it a lot when you're in the field, but really that's the most fun part of it. At least I think it is for. But it's also taking what we see in the field, what we find, and learning something from that. And Jim has been really, really good and has had a lot of good experience with particular projects that each one has given us another few steps forward to better understanding the archaeology in the Verde Valley. So what I thought I would do is just sort of highlight some of the things that I could pull up out of my records of what Jim has done. Now, to illustrate, he's got a main career as a dentist, where he's learned all of his skills of persuasion. Open wide and saying, we won't hurt it there. And he's used that same skill to encourage people like you to come and help us do our projects. In that sense, I like to call him an archaeological consigliere, going into his Italian background, because he's an arranger. He knows people. He knows the right people. He knows the right words to say to get things done. And many of these projects are done because of Jim's people skills and his personality that we all know so well. I first really ran into Jim and Diane, I think it's in 1995, when I think the first project I got in my records was working with the V-Bar-V Ranch survey. And as you know, V-Bar-V Ranch is the greatest petrichor site in the Verde Valley. But what we didn't have is a context. It's like everything else is that's a nice thing, that's a nice site. But unless you have the context to understand why it's there and how it fits into the big picture, you're losing a lot of information. So the V-Bar-V Ranch survey is one of the projects we did to get a better understanding of how that rock site is in the world. We did that over a 2-year period, I think. And from that, we did find a context for the site, which dates primarily between 1150 and 1300, which is turning out to be the most abundant, prolific, and most populous area of time in the Verde Valley. And then a really important one for us was done between 1999 and 2000 with the Sacred Mountain survey. We've all been to Sacred Mountain. It's a neat, wonderful site that takes upon some of our newest ideas about social organization and settlement patterns. We developed some pretty neat ideas that totally reverses our concepts and people's understandings of what's and what we're all about. From that, we learned, much to my surprise, that the area surrounding the site doesn't seem to have been used during the Tuzibu phase, which is the main date for the Pueblo. Everything we found in that field was Hanaki phase, a little bit earlier. So I still don't know quite to make of that, how to explain that or what's going on with it. But we'll eventually get there. But it did help crystallize some of the work that I did later in understanding the role of Sacred Mountain in the Verde Valley. And that is that it's no coincidence that big field site is all around the Pueblo. It's because outside of the floodplain, the best agricultural land in the Verde Valley is the type of soil that surrounds Sacred Mountain. And so in my concept, I think Sacred Mountain was the breadbasket to the Verde Valley, and probably was able to produce more than it could consume, and that extra stuff would have been traded to places like Shadas Pass, Kinnikinnick, and their sites up in Anderson Mesa country, turning it into a much more important node between the northern Somali country and down here in the southern area. Then in 2001, we did the Handcuff Ranch survey. Many of you may have met and knew Mrs. Handcuff, who is the quintessential Auntie-M from the Wizard of Oz. An adorable little tiny lady. She was just great. She the family wanted to reduce the size of the ranch. Forest Service wanted to acquire it. There was no funding to pay for the survey. The Forest Service didn't want to get a piece of land that her nephew we put a brand new road through that would go through sites and stuff and give us management problems. So we volunteered, and with Jim's help, and some of many of you folks here, arranged to do a survey of the Handcuff property before it went to the Forest Service. And that way, we helped them plan the road through Hononki that would bypass, their ranch. Because they were always tired of people driving by and stuff. And that again helped give us a context in which to better understand Hononki and the small field house sites that we found around that area are from the same time period. So from that we can begin to see the relationship between big habitation sites like Hononki and how they found what their settlement and land use had in place for that. And then one of the most fun projects, I think, in 2002 was the Shadas road survey. We all know about the Shadas road coming from Hopi down through Shadas Pass and on out to Crescent eventually. And Bill Stafford, who was the recreation staff person on the Ranger District, was really interested in history and really wanted to develop it as a trail. And so we, once again, can you help us get some folks out? Sure, and here we all came. And it turns out to be probably one of the nicest stretches of a historic period road I've ever seen. If you start headed west from the Stoneman Lake interchange, you can follow it all the way across to 179. And it's like a step backwards in time. It looks like, except for the fact that you don't have horses and stuff running up and down the road, it is just like yesterday. You can really have the feeling and setting of what it would have been like riding a horse or wagon through that area. Found some very nice sites on that project. And then we did the Hartwell Canyon survey in 2002. You were coming in with Jim. I think you were mostly by yourself with one or two other folks, recording some extra sites at Hartwell Canyon. Again, giving us, indicating that Hartwell is just like many of the other canyons in that red rock country. Around 1100 to 1130, they're suddenly occupied. There's not really much evidence for anything earlier than that in those canyons. But it was sort of a boom and a bust. By 1275 or so, they're all gone. But at least it expands the settlement pattern of the red rock country from one or two canyons that we sort of knew to the whole area now. So it broadens the area of understanding of those communities over the whole red rock area. And then in 2003, Jerry got into the act too, and started with his Lincoln Canyon survey, the area that's over to the west of Hononki. And we got something like, I think, about 8 or 9 sites for that. One of them, which I still haven't been to, which I need to, looks like it's a prehistoric reservoir. And that's something that's very, very rare in the Southwest. So that was probably the main discovery for that particular survey. And then, of course, the really big one that all of you have been involved in was the Sycamore Canyon survey. And Jim's great contribution on that, with help from people like Keith and Jeannie, has been to do controlled analysis of the sherds on the site in the field. So you wasn't to bring them back to the lab and do all of the lab work, just do it right there in the field. You have no idea how important that is and how important this project is. It is, first off, it's the single largest survey of the Verde Valley that's ever been done. Secondly, it's the only one that has these controlled collections to go along with it. It's very, very frustrating when I see old site cards to see some assignment of a culture period for them with no information. And looking at it, I'll say, well, that could be, but there's an evidence it could be. But with the controlled collection, not only can we be more confident about assigning a time period to it, but we can do lots more other things. Jim was the author of a really, really important paper that few people have really picked up on. And that's the one that he did for the Verde Valley Archaeology Conference back in 2010 or something like that. And that's where Jim took and synthesized the results of surveys of, 113 sites, something like that, to come up with a big picture of what was happening in that Sycamore Canyon area over the years. He also related that to population changes, which you can do, and look as well as look at changing directions of trade and influence that are happening with the people who are living in that area. One of the things that was really fascinating to me about this project is when Jim was through showing the relationships and things, the upper area, the Muddy-on Rim country, which is where the Sycamore Canyon Survey is, has the exact same cultural trajectory and sequence of things going on that are happening down in the valley proper. So once again, it unites the Verde Valley into a single southern Sonoma culture, whether they're in the uplands, in the metric environmental zone, or the ones down low in the River Valley. And then he was involved in a survey that he was in charge of that I know nothing about. And that was a survey that he reportedly did on Roger Daisley's property.
We almost finished it. One section we wasn't finished yet.
Because I haven't seen a single site card. And I have these gaps in my site book, so I'm hoping someday I'll be able to see what those gaps might have. But so Jim has followed the same track that happens to most professionals. We love doing the field work. We get help to do the field work. But when it comes to doing the paperwork, who does it, Jerry? So I understand. That's okay. But it has to get it sent. Another important survey is Hayfield Mesa. And that's one, again, that some of you folks were involved in. As you may know, that in 1895, I think it was, Cosmos Mendeleev, one of the famous archaeologists from the Smithsonian, had been paid by the U.S. government to come to Arizona to make a map and begin the stabilization work on Casa Grande, the country's very first national monument before we have a Park Service. And so he and his wife and his company came out down to Phoenix. And when they got to Phoenix, there was a telegram waiting for them. It said, "Stop. Funding not approved. Stay in Phoenix till next fiscal year." Which was like 4 or 5 weeks away. And so he sort of, well, what am I going to do for 5 weeks stuck in Phoenix? And so he decided to just do a reconnaissance of the Verde. And he went on horseback with this team of surveyors with their old-fashioned survey equipment of alidades and transits, the ones things that we still use today, and did a marvelous job of finding sites along the way. And one of the sites he found was the big one on Greenfield Mesa. But once again, we had this big, neat site just sitting in a void. We knew nothing at all about it. We started survey work with our archaeologists and had to stop because there are so many sites out there that look so much alike that we would stumbling over each other's sites and double recording them, and we couldn't do it. Today, with GPS technology, the center folks did a resurvey of many of the areas that we did. They helped us straighten that out. And again, to do the ceramic analysis part of it. So once again, we have this wonderful picture now of the main site, the Hayfield Mesa ruins, is related to all those field houses out there. So we have yet another big agricultural producing area for the Verde Valley that again is probably deeply involved in trade. And then, of course, we all have the survey work that Dave Wilcox has been doing, the Silcox survey work that also crosses over into the kind of stuff that I have been doing. And then we have the excavation projects. Another nifty one was the Verde Ranger Station project, where the Camp Verde, the Verde Rangers District is on the Prescott, but their office is on the Coconino, because we're such nice people. And they needed a bigger place, but lo and behold, they have a pit house site where they wanted to do the construction work. So again, no funding to do the archaeology. We're planning on the part of the Forest Service. But once again, we got folks together and pulled and we excavated the pit house site. And that was nifty because it looks like it was connected to the salt mine activities, because it had 2 pits. The salt pits looked sort of like an axe with a jump with a neat little point that were used especially for mining salt. And it goes, and what it does is it puts the date of using that salt mine at about 200-300 years earlier than the knowledge of that time took us to. So just one little pit house, a small little other remodel type area. But again, it's giving us a new light, a new perspective into the salt traffic. Then we have Crescent Moon Ranch, another real important area where we ran into a very pit house site where they were putting in a water line, as well as then some outside cooking areas with small Sonata style roast pits. That again, no funding, didn't expect the stuff to be there, but folks who came to help with this, Jill and Joan, I've got great pictures of you digging little roasting pits of things. And then we found another big roasting pit from the Appetite period as they cut to expanding the road, and they didn't know that site was there. So we have a whole time frame from very early to about 800 AD. Well, actually, we have an archaic component as well. It goes back to about maybe 1000 BC in the present Ranch area, going up through the Hanaki phase to 1150 or so, and a couple pit house sites in between the two. And then most recently was the Hayfield Rothbard. And that's turning out to be really interesting because of the Verde road project, which I'm sure you all heard about. As part of that project, they encountered another site where the bridge is scheduled to cross over the river. And I think it's a prehistoric field site. There's another couple sites that I've seen very much like it. They're scatters of pottery, certain concentrations, and the main important tip-off is there's scattered rock piles scattered around Fort that represent the scattered remains of rock mounds that have been used for corn or agaves and other mounds of water to both catch the moisture and the retired rodents from digging it up. Well, the date on it is early. It's about 800 AD, which is close to the date of the draw site. So, and it's close enough, there's got to be a connection for it. Now, surveys, archaeological surveys along the Verde River are few and far between because it's all private land. So other than a little work that was done in the 1930s, a little bit here, a little bit there, we don't really have much good evidence of what's along the river. Well, sites like Hayfield Draw are of the same time period as several of all of these sites. And what it's looking like is that the organizational pattern very early is similar to what I think we see very, very late. You have a population study beginning at sites like Hayfield Draw, and there's another one on the Cloverleaf Ranch, about 2 miles further down the stream, which allegedly has a ball court here. And the ball court sites tend to be thought of as regional centers that then begin to expand and relate to a specific area that becomes their community. And my suspicion is that the Hayfield Draw site and now the Steel area as part of the Verde Connect are all part of a big, large, early community of in-house agriculturalists developing the Verde at the time when agriculture was just becoming a real common everyday thing. So once that project gets going, the comparative information that we got from the Hayfield Draw site is going to be really, really important. And then what I think is Jim's most important contribution is something that puts us both in the same boat that many archaeologists today are not in, and that is pottery. Because, as you know, we have a little site in Flagstaff called Eldon Pueblo that we excavated for a number of years. And when we answered our questions about, is there anything there to work with, the answer is, you bet. Not you bet, but you really bet there's a lot there. So now we're in the analysis stage of all that. And since about shortly after Jim helped found the center, we began doing artifact labs on Sundays at the old Yarrapotten College building. And that got us going in terms of the cataloging and analysis of our artifacts. We did that for about 2 or 3 years. Bill and Joe were part of that project too. And then you get out of the Yarrapotten College and move to other facilities. And that grew, and so we moved to the building of the closet over here. And with that, we began a ceramic sorting development. And that began, I didn't type that part of it out. Well, it started about 2012, I think, 2012, 2013. And we met pretty much every Sunday, every other Sunday during the winter months to work on the pottery. We sort about 1,000 shirts every time we do this. And over the years, I know that alone we've analyzed over 35,000 shirts. That work and that analysis was pivotal to our understanding of open Pueblo and what was happening in different places and different parts. Jim's been a tremendous value with that, inviting other people to join the ceramic field. And in addition, on his own initiative, he developed his own ceramic teaching class, something that does not exist in any of the universities. One of the big weaknesses of the educational system is they are not teaching basic identification skills, artifacts, or ceramics. And the question is, if you don't know your local ceramics, how do you know what you're dealing with? And the answer is you don't. But Jim's been instrumental in teaching the ceramics to other regular people, and we've been slowly drawing on all the contract archaeologists that Jim has sat down and helped do the training and learning of the ceramics and stuff, to help them do better jobs so they have work to do moving forward. And I tried to figure out what is that value, what is the value of that work? Because people think that sitting around all day breaking up dirty pieces of pottery and arguing about, is that early or late age?
No, we don't argue.
It takes a certain kind of people to want to do that kind of work. And it takes a certain kind of person to convince them this is actually sort of fun and you do stuff. And so basically because of Jim and his manners and his finesse working with people, that is getting all of this work done. And to date, I made a rough estimate that it's something on the order of that the value of the work that we've sorted so far is about $88,000. So that's the kind of work that does not get done by most agencies. If they do any work at all, the stuff just sits there, and that's not good. It's not professional. So basically, with the help of people like you, organized by people like Jim, is helping us do our job much better. In the course of it, hopefully giving opportunities to people like you to learn stuff, to improve your basic skills, and expand the realm of citizen science that's exemplified by the work of Jim. And the last comment I wanted to make is that when I began looking at the pictures, because normally, as you know, I do a PowerPoint or something when I teach class, but I just didn't have many pictures. So what I did notice in the few pictures I did have is whenever he's in the field, he wears a white hat. And so I think that is a good symbol that indicates what Jim is. From the cowboy movies, the good guy wears the white hat. Well, Jim's the good guy here in my local archaeology circles that wears that white hat and does all these great things for me, for Prescott now, for people, and for archaeology in the center. So why don't we give Jim a standing ovation? I'm proud to present you with the Sherman Boy Memorial Award of 2020 for the great work that you've done for all of us. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for
your accepting this award on behalf of all of you that are here and the people who couldn't make it, but tried to invite everybody that was part of our archaeology life here in the Verde Valley. Diane, my wife, has been a real inspiration to me, as you know. And this is, and Bill and Joan Sexton were the ones that got me involved. They're the blame. All the things that Peter said about me, it's blamed on Bill and Joan. But thank you all for coming. I know that it's a rough time with the COVID, and you don't want to spread it, and I don't want to spread it, but thank you again. And for those who aren't here, they emailed me or called me, and it's for them too. So thank you.
He wanted to go fishing when he retired. Aren't we lucky?
We have some cake back here and some water if you want to partake in that, and talk to Jim a little bit more. Thank you all for coming.
I pull it out.
Oh, I didn't even know.
That'll fly up.
How's it doing?